Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we are returning to War in the Pacific, Admirals Edition, our Let's Play series against Evoken. It's been a while since our last turn, and I should have 2 episodes here for you today. We've got the June 12th replay, then we'll do the June 13th replay, and then we'll take a look at the actual map. Now, I'm not anticipating anything dramatic happening at this point. Evoke. Did I say XTRG at the start of this? I meant Evoken. It used to be XTRG. But Evoken and I had some, and I've talked about it on the channel before, I had some work news come up that kind of kicked me out of the mood of wanting to game for a while. I basically took like 2 weeks off. Then I decided to come back and play, some American Revolution when I finally wanted something that wasn't too headspace inducing. And so I ended up taking about a month to get my last turn back to him. So we're kind of like, nothing changed. It's the same player, but I will say that I think we probably lost any momentum. I'm assuming it was like just about to strike, if you will. But I don't know. I guess we'll find out in the second turn. But yeah, so that's where we are right now, and hopefully trying to pick things up in a bit more of a aggressive pace than what we had been doing previously. That being said, here you can see the Philippines still hasn't fallen, as a reminder. Been a little while. So, let's see. All right, so still bombing in sort of the Philippines at Clark Field. A lot of air reconnaissance. We saw some ships with some flotation damage stuff. I'm assuming that was Japanese, because or maybe it was an American sub that had some flotation damage. I didn't quite see what it was. But a lot of recon going on. Not a lot of actual stuff, though, as far as I can see. Fairly quiet turn, it would seem. Even the air raids were pretty limited to just the Philippines here. I guess we'll see what the next turn has in store for us, though. Okay. Well, Critical, they did, 101st did air assault in Gulf War I, I believe, right? They rushed way out on some helos and took some objectives in the Iraqi rear. I don't know that they do it a whole lot now, but I don't know that we're doing a lot of air assault currently either, so probably somewhat limited to the schools, but yeah. I always just assumed it was more of a light force where if you had to deploy quickly, you didn't have a ton of baggage train, you had to throw someone in there quickly. You could do that more like via air transport, but anyway. Okay. All right, so new refits beginning in Australia with the light cruiser group. And I think that probably about does it for this turn. All right, so we're going to go in here. It is now June 13th. Magic. All right, let's see what Evoken has in store for us here, if anything. And then we'll take a look at our next turn here. Now, as a reminder, I am rushing the Prince of Wales back to England for a refit, so she should be getting pretty close. American subs firing torpedoes on patrol boats because that's a sound use of torpedoes, but that's what you get sometimes when you've got very aggressive skippers. Okay. So that was a very quiet PM phase. Just a single torpedo fired by a U.S. sub. At least we didn't see any Japanese subs torpedoing us. One of the things we've really struggled with lately is Evoken has started to use his submarines much more effectively. We lost a rather large Dutch tanker a couple days ago. I think we lost a big cargo ship a couple days ago. And so, we've started losing more merchant shipping. I think, especially with the AKs, tankers are kind of a different matter for both sides. But especially with regards to AKs, the Allies make so many of them that there's not a realistic chance, really, that you ever get too tight on transports. Especially later in the war when the things start flying off the assembly line. But at least for now, anyway, we've been doing okay. And, but we've started to see the Japanese really hone in on that attacking of merchant ships strategy. Are we winning, boss? Chaplain O'War asks. I mean, we're the allies, so we better win, but right now I'd say the Japanese are doing better than history in the South Pacific. Remember, they took New Caledonia. They briefly took Savi, Baker Island, and Canton, sort of in the Central Pacific. We retook Baker. We may attempt to retake Canton. For now, it's fairly isolated. Apparently, flotation repairs are failing on the SS Dolphin, which is a submarine that had been crippled. We still have the Philippines having Clark Field, so, like, it's June of 42. The fact that the Americans still have a large presence in the Philippines, way better than historical, although we are in the process of starving. The Japanese just haven't driven us back yet. They did, we counterattacked, we drove them back, and then now they've just been content to let us starve there, which is what is in the process of happening. And then also in Burma/Rangoon area, really around the Rangoon area, but I guess technically all of Burma, we've been doing way better than historical, still having full control of all of Burma, so that's a big thing. Also, nice, port expands to size 7 at Perth. That should help with our transit into Western Australia. And Sushin expands the airfield to size 3. We should turn off the airfield construction there to preserve supply in China, because that's always a difficult thing. You think the Japanese are going to land at Darwin? I didn't see that. What, did you see a fort? Maybe I missed it. All right, we've got a bunch of units arriving apparently this turn. Some engineer battalions arriving in Russia. Too bad I can't use them yet. Maybe he'll make a mistake and he'll drop below the required garrison levels there. I didn't see anyone in Australia. No one in and around Australia as far as I can tell. I mean, maybe the Japanese will land there, but that, I think, is a secondary priority. If I was the Japanese, the first thing they need to do is they need to take Burma. We've been saying that for a while. We haven't seen a major push there yet, but that's really where they need to take. They're way behind there. And if they don't take here by 43, once the 29 starts coming off the assembly lines, we can hit all the key oil facilities and basically win the war by 44 by shutting off their economy if we hold Burma. So they need to take Burma, I think, anyway. Meanwhile, we've got a couple of cargo ships here in Rangoon that are continuing to unload lifeblood into the port so that we can keep supporting the British Empire in this place. Both those task forces are unloading, and supplies in Rangoon are at 80,000, which is a pretty good number. They don't pay a ton of attention to the fuel level in Rangoon because it has a refinery and it produces its own fuel. So you can see it's got a level 200 refinery, which is pretty big, and I'm assuming there's oil that gets piped in here somewhere. I don't remember where it all comes from, but it is a net positive for fuel. So usually it produces everything it needs for itself for that. Let's see here. Meanwhile, we retook Mole Mine not that long ago, and I do have one brigade that's trying to sneak south to Tavoy, just to see if we can nab that level 4 airfield from him for at least a little while. If he's going to be very passive on the Burma front, I'm going to exploit that and see if there's an opportunity to, maybe he only left a base force or a garrison at Tavoy. Maybe he's building up at Chiang Mai and Rahang or Bangkok, and maybe he's, I don't know. If I had a level 4 airfield here, I'd probably use it. Although I guess Chiang Mai is closer and is a larger airfield. And then some of these other airfields here also can be larger. So maybe Tavoy doesn't matter as much to him, but as much as I can be a nuisance to him as possible, if we can take Margoy and Tavoy, then we can push their frontline airfields back 100 miles or so, which could help some of our shipping get in a little bit more easily. I don't think he's got the ability to supply enough supply into Port Blair to make that a real air threat until after Rangoon falls. And we did base. We do have some float planes here at Great Nicobar. They were all disabled, but now that we've started to unload some supplies, we do have some of them back to ready. So we've got some float planes here that can really see deep into Japanese-controlled south. What is this anyway? The Strait of Malacca and the Gulf of Siam. Is this technically all the South China Sea, all the way down here towards Singapore? Is this really the South China Sea down here? North of the Java Sea? I don't know. Seems kind of not super close. But anyway. Okay, so where did the airfield just complete? Well, there was a level 3 airfield that just finished in China. I kind of want to turn it off now because I don't want to spend a ton of supplies and resources on that. I'll have to maybe take a look at that after. Because I'm not seeing it on here. Maybe it was actually in Burma or something. I don't recall. But anyway. So, yeah. I don't really know that. I don't see any indication of anything different happening in China. There was at one point a push in Cyan when we had different opponents, but Evoken has been pretty passive in China. He doesn't necessarily need to be overly aggressive. I think in theory he would want to take Guilin, Luchou, and Nanning so he can transfer supplies from sort of the South Pacific area, or not South Pacific, the Indochina, Malaya, and even Palembang. What he can do is he can get all the oil at Palembang, ship it 100 miles via sea to Singapore, drop it in Singapore, and then the good roadways in Singapore and sort of rail lines will let him transport that all the way out to Shanghai or even Busan. And then he can make a real short sea voyage into Japan. You do lose some efficiency that way from a transport, like some of the supply is spoiled. That being said, you save so much in shipping and you reduce the sort of cost and the overhead on your very limited merchant marine that is a strategy a lot of Japanese players take. But in order to do that, he needs to take Luchou and he needs to take Nanning. And I don't think these little minor roads here will cut it. I think he's got to take Guilin so he can run it straight through Henyang and then Changsha and up into these major railways. But yeah, we're playing a human V. It's a turn-based game though, so one day, one turn. We've been playing this game for like 4 years now, I think. It's been a long time. All right, we got a lot of shipping here in the Coral Sea. These guys are going up toward Darwin. A little bit risky because we did lose Port Moresby, but we haven't seen any indication of air units based out of there yet. Some of these guys are coming back from Darwin because Darwin, despite being on the continent, doesn't have a rail line linking it with the East Coast. So transporting supply by ship is a smart strategy. It's got a Tarawa. One ship spotted at Tarawa. Could just be a sub. Could be something going for the Baker Island transport. We've got a couple of ships here unloading. All right, let's actually do this. Just because I'm a little nervous about these guys hanging out for so long, we are going to pull the one ship that just has 4 supply out of the task force. Form a new cargo task force. Or transport task force, I guess it needs to be. Form new task force. Amphibious, I guess we'll just do that. And then the one with 4 supply. The victory value is worth more than 4 supply, so we will go ahead and just send this guy back to Pearl pronto. Maybe we'll even flank speed it. He only makes... He should be safe enough going back on its own. I guess if he runs into a sub, he won't be, but it's not worth keeping him around, so we'll go ahead and just send him that way. Flank speed! Get out of there! We'll leave the other 3 ships here. We'll expose them to that risk. The John Adams, 16 victory value. The Camille Bank, 12, and the Centaur, 8. So these are actually small-ish APs, and they don't... 2 of them aren't even American, but we don't have enough troop... AP stands for troop transport. We do not have enough troop transports to maintain our offensives right now in this war. So every troop transport I can get is basically gold, even if the victory value isn't high. That being said, you do have to take some risks in wartime, and sending these guys out without escort is the risk I was willing to take. Are these guys moving east? Doesn't say. I do have, speaking of risk, I do have a single fleet carrier unit here. The USS Hornet is hanging out. They are providing... Their orders are basically to provide cover for these task forces. But they're far enough back that hopefully if the Japanese are going for Baker Island, they'll stumble into Baker and maybe my carrier will react and bomb them, but they will hit these guys first. And then I can make that decision on whether it makes sense to send a single carrier in, right? Like if it's a cruiser task force, by all means. If it's a carrier task force, it's probably not worth the risk. We are sending a replenishment task force out, right? That's a tanker. I thought I had a replenishment task force out here somewhere. Where, oh, where are the tankers? Where could they be? Maybe not. Okay, well. They probably are fine. They're probably fine, as long as I don't have to sprint them anywhere. No sign of the Japanese in the Aleutians. Do we have a replenishment? Do we have a tanker we can pull up for a replenishment? It doesn't look like it because I don't see the option for the task force type. Oh, wait, it's over here. We do have a fleet oiler. Neosho, your famous history precedes you, although it hasn't happened yet. Let's get you a couple of escorts. You're already loaded with fuel. Okay. So we'll send you to Palmyra, which was kind of behind where the carriers are. All right. Just in case we need to sprint and need a little bit more fuel. Meanwhile, we are going to bring the 298th Infantry Regiment. Well, these guys are staying, I think, here. Or no, actually, we're going to pull them out, and we're going to put a new unit in, because Midway's overstacked. Wasn't Neosho the oiler that was sunk at Coral Sea? The Japanese spotted her, and then like they thought it was a carrier, and they deployed an airstrike, and then they showed up, and they realized you sent an entire carrier air wing against a single tanker. But they were there already, and they had the bombs on the planes, and it didn't make sense for them not to drop their bombs. So you had like, I think it wasn't like 40 dive bombers attacking a single tanker and a destroyer escort. I thought that's what happened with Neosho. So yeah, she died a pretty quick death. All right. I don't think anything changed. I don't really want to do anything different with these guys. We've still got these different. I'm jealous of Class A packs. You get to fly in a P-40. We've got 24 P-38 Lightnings here. Like all these guys are just training, doing their thing. Well, technically they're escorting and doing cap missions, but they are getting a little bit of experience here in their flight pilot training experience. The P-38s that we brought into Chittagong, they're about halfway ready. Got about another week before most of the air wing will be completely airworthy. We'll get another 2 tomorrow. These guys are set to train at 0 range to keep fatigue down, and you can see a lot of these guys are starting to gain some experience in defensive flying and strafing, which is helping their overall experience as well as we try and get this group sped up to combat readiness. We do have quite a few very good pilots in the 70s here, but we've also got a lot of younger, more rookie pilots that we'd like to groom into better pilots. I don't know about Moresby. My initial strategy, and I've been sort of planning it out for a little bit now, although I haven't focused a ton on stream, is getting troops positioned for a South Pacific offensive. I don't know if I will do this. I haven't fully made up my mind, but I'm thinking the first real big strike back against the Japanese, we'll probably do some pinprick stuff here. I have some tentative plans of maybe landing a regiment at Canton Island and seeing how it goes. The problem here is the stack limit's 6,000 men, so you can't really effectively fight with a division there. But it seems like the enemy's only got a guard unit, so I think if we drop a regiment down of 100 assault value or so, and he's got a guard unit with like 30 or 40 assault value, as long as we go in with a heavy bombardment task force, which I've got 11 battleships at Pearl. I think, 10 of them are seaworthy? 8 of them are No, these guys are just undergoing refits. So everybody... all the Pearl didn't really hurt us too bad. So we've got 9 effective battleships. Tennessee's getting ready for transit back to the U.S. to repair its float damage, which isn't getting better. And then California is also ready to get transited back. But the rest of our battle wagons are all here, including the Warspite. God bless her soul. And I don't think any of them have upgrades or refits. Maybe they do, actually. It's June. Well, those are the guys under repair, actually, so... yeah, the ready ones have an upgrade in 2 weeks, but not yet. Alright, so... in 2 months, sorry. So I'm thinking we'll send, like, 9 battleships in, nuke Canton Island, drop a regiment there, and see... like, that'll be our test bed for an amphibious assault. We've made a few strives to do a few limited counterattacks. We successfully took Baker Island from a small Japanese force. We successfully took Savi back from a small Japanese force. But I'd like to try like a real integrated amphibious assault, not just like sneaking in a handful of transports at night and dropping troops over the beach, but a real sort of dress rehearsal for a bigger offensive. And so I think what we're going to do is at some point in the near future, we will send a regiment to Canton Island. The regiment will, probably a month away. It's got to prep, but we'll move to Canton. We'll move in like 9 battleships or so. We'll drop them across the beach with a huge bombardment task force with our carriers in the back providing cover, and we'll test that out and see if it works. If it goes well, then we will already have troops positioned and planning for an offensive in the South Pacific. I haven't decided yet if we're going for the New Hebrides chain and sort of lopping them off one at a time. I like the idea of getting Tana and Ifate and then using air power out of these islands to suppress Espiritu Santos, or Luganville, technically, the major port there, and then also Nomaya. And if we do that, then we can come in with a lot less risk. Also, if we take Ifate and Tana land-based air, in conjunction with our fleet carriers, could give us an opportunity to engage the Japanese Kito Butai on more even terms, because we don't know where it is, and we haven't engaged it. The only thing we've done is put a single submarine-based torpedo into the Hiryu, I believe it was, about 2 months back, so she may be repaired as well. The Japanese have not been using their fleet carriers. Interesting, XTRG burned through a lot of fuel in the first few weeks, sprinting them everywhere, but we have not seen them at all, even remotely recently. So it does make me nervous in any kind of major counterattack. I'm thinking Canton is remote enough and far back enough that, and we'll have float planes flying out of Baker and Vadapu that we could come in toward Canton without, we don't even think they have float planes operating out of here. So we could come in here pretty well disguised and take the island back. But that is a different story for the New Hebrides and New Caledonia operations. Those will need to be much more sure of where the Japanese are, especially since if we're landing in Nomaya, we're probably landing 2 or 3 divisions there, which will be a huge operation with a ton of transports. If the Japanese were to use the Kirubutai and wipe out that landing force, we would probably lose so many landing craft that even if we could replace the divisions that we lost, we would probably lose so many landing craft, or not really landing craft, troop transports, that we would not be able to launch another operation like that again until 43, maybe mid-43. So, landing a regiment, whatever, it's like 2-3 transports. If you land 2-3 full divisions, that's a lot of shipping. That involves a lot of risk. That involves probably 100 or more ships. And so these operations will have to be much more sure of. I think, the sound strategy is probably to go for Espiritu, or even not even that. Maybe get Nadi, Ifate, Tanna, use air bases here to extend influence west to the Coral Sea, and then you just starve the guys on New Caledonia out. New Caledonia has some rough, I think it has some rough terrain. Jungle. So yeah, New Caledonia has some rough, very defensible terrain. They could hold up a large force for a long time there. It also has big potential airfields. It's within reach of the New Hebrides and the Espiritu Santos areas. So if you just land here, they could really make your life hell in a way that, like, even worse than Guadalcanal because the ranges are shorter. Although it would be harder for their naval assets to intervene down here. That being said, just cutting them off doesn't do the goal of keeping float planes from spotting convoys and perhaps harassing convoys to Australia out. So New Caledonia and the New Hebrides do make a lot of sense to attack head-on rather than bypassing, just because you want to keep that slock open and you want to make sure that you don't have the enemy always knowing when you're shipping large task forces to Australia. So, you know, that's a consideration. We could land north of New Caledonia at La Foya. The other thing I considered was Comac and just marching south. You know, get a foothold at Comac. It's probably less well defended. Throw a bunch of land-based air in here to secure yourself, and then march south along the roadways down toward Nomaya. But we don't really know. Like we bombarded both Comac and Nomaya. We didn't really see much. We know there's some ground units there, but we didn't see anything too imposing. You know, the other approach is if you know they don't have a lot there, you could land like a brigade at Tanna, a brigade at Efate, a brigade at Nomaya, or a division at Nomaya, maybe a brigade at Comac, and then a brigade at Tanna, Efate, and then like just lock this whole area down all simultaneously. That level of planning might be a little bit beyond me at this point. I'm not sure. But that's kind of the situation that we find ourselves in. Now, if we did look last turn, we didn't really see much air activity at all. Japan lost one aircraft operationally. We lost nothing. We've been giving Japan a pretty big breather in terms of air casualties for the last month. That being said, they have lost 1,800 aircraft. They have lost a lot of pilots already. Most of those are like Army bomber pilots. They haven't lost a lot of fighter pilots. We haven't a lot of fighter engagements. But we have shredded probably the cream of their Army aviations, at least their bomber pilots, and to some extent their naval pilots. They lost a lot of Bettys and Nels. So I'm hopeful there. They also did lose 20 to 30 zeros in the Pearl Harbor strikes. So they've lost a good chunk of experienced pilots, 322 KIA. So I'm hopeful that they don't have too big of a training program edge. We've got a number of aces, by the way. Also, our leading ace in the entire war, or tied for it, is a Dutch pilot, Van Harlem, flying his P-40E, although he's since been withdrawn, I believe. I don't know that I have a lot else to show you guys this turn. It was a pretty quiet pair of turns. Ship availability, just in case you want to know, because it's been a while. We got the Quincy arriving tomorrow, so nice heavy cruiser. We got the Wahoo and the Guardfish, some submarines arriving tomorrow. And then we've got, is it 2 more weeks? I feel like we got another carrier coming before too long, or maybe we already got the Wasp. I'll have to double check. Oh, we don't have another carrier till 43. We've got every carrier that we're going to get until 43. Wasp is somewhere. Enterprise is on the way back to the Pacific. We're flank speeding her out that way. And I've been in the process of transiting my carriers back to Pearl because they've been spending most of the time in the Indian Ocean, because I assume that's where the Japanese are going to make a major push. But we put 300 land-based aircraft into India, and I don't like my concern with operating in the Indian Ocean or the Bay of Bengal with carriers. You are too close to land-based air, too close to large land-based air forces. Like if I put my carriers and I want them to support Rangoon, carrier aviation ranges are short, so you got to get them close to the coast. If you're in this area, you are vulnerable to enemy Bettys and Nels. That is not a good situation to be in. If it's like a small island base, that's one thing, but if you're they could stack half their air force in Thailand if they wanted to. So I've just decided that operating in the Bay of Bengal, not a smart move for the carriers. It does make sense to shield Sri Lanka if you want to try and lure them into a battle where land-based aviation helps you. But I just don't think the juice is worth the squeeze. And especially if we are going to be making an offensive in the south, then it does make sense to get my carriers back to Pearl. And that's what we're in the process of doing. Now, we do have 2 carriers which are currently refitting in South Africa. We've got the Lexington and Saratoga, which will both be refitting there for the next 17 days. So they're out of action until basically till July. And then they'll flank back to the Central Pacific after they do that. Did I have anybody else moving around here? Air combat, we've got the Yorktown on the way back to South Africa, and then she'll transit to Pearl. We showed the Enterprise already on the way to Pearl. And where is Wasp? She's around here somewhere. She is in Task Force 180, which is off map heading to Pearl. And then we already showed the Hornet, which is operating on our Lonesome to the west of Palmyra. Battleship situation's good. We haven't lost any. We have the 9 healthy battleships at Pearl, 2 getting ready to transit back to the U.S. We've got 1 repairing. The Pennsylvania will be ready in about 2 months in San Diego. There's a couple others in the States right now, too. Actually, I think I might be transiting some back to Pearl as we speak. Maybe not. Oh, there's one in Mare Island. We've got the West Virginia. She'll be ready in a week. Does she need to refit, or is she good? Oh, she's good. All right, she's refitted. So those guys are there. The Prince of Wales is on the way back to England. You can see she took pretty heavy damage in the Battle of Mersing off the coast of Malaya, where we destroyed a Japanese brigade that was trying to do a wide southern flanking movement. We sent a Naval and Air Force task force to destroy them. We wiped out a brigade at sea of the Japanese there. But the Prince of Wales and Repulse both took heavy damage from Japanese destroyers and torpedo boats. And so the Prince of Wales is going to arrive back in England in a week to begin a major refit there. We kind of had to hold him up in Singapore for a few weeks, and then we snuck him out in the dead of night, moving at like 5 knots, bad weather, almost like a channel, the channel run for the German fleet, except the British Navy just sneaking him out to the south to Oosthaven, just somehow getting out of there without getting hit by enemy air patrols. I think we kind of lulled him into a false sense of security. Maybe he thought they were too damaged to move, because I don't think he was patrolling too hard for them. But we got him out of there. And Repulse is already... She's at sea right now, I think, with a carrier, right? We've got the Indomitable and the Illustrious with some U.S. cruisers out this way, heading toward Diego Garcia right now on a mission. And then we've got the Repulse here, fully operational, fully repaired, with the Hermes and the Formidable. The Hermes using a U.S. Marine squadron of Wildcats on the way to Coast Island. They're going to set up a potential ambush. The Japanese have been launching a lot of Betty and Nell strikes on Coast, probably just to use them as training missions. We've got a couple of good pioneer battalions of the Australian First Corps. We deployed them to Coast to prevent the Japanese from putting Bettys and Nells in here and then cutting off India to Australia trade. But that did kind of string them out there on a rope where they're within bombing range of Palembang and Java. So that's why we've been getting hit there. Perhaps it was foolish to put such good troops in under air cover, but we'll take advantage of that situation, maybe get a chance to kill some Japanese bomber pilots again. Take a look at SIGINT. Any news? Heavy radio volume at Hiroshima. Maybe that's where the carriers are. We don't know. Heavy volume at Truk. They could be there too. We don't know. I've yet to get a report of where an actual important warship is. A lot of land-based intel. But boy, wouldn't I kill for ship intel. And this is the part of the war where we should have the best ability to intercept Japanese SIGINT. So, little frustrating there. Oh, how's that sub doing? The Dolphin or whatever was flooding, right? Float damage isn't too bad. She's on her way back to Bombay, but float's only 28. That is... I mean, she can only make 10 knots. She's going to be in dry dock for a little while, but that is not too concerning, I don't think. And then we saw something else down here near Rabaul and Rangoon, didn't we? Yeah, this one's in much worse shape. The KV-8, it looks like. 69 flood damage. Nice. And only making 2 knots. So I do not. So that's basically 1 hex per phase. So 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, 6 days, 7 days, 8 days, 9 days. So it's going to take 10 days to get back to Townsville. I don't know if we can speed up the return if we go to Karen's. 5418. Save us a day or two. But she may get sunk. Are our torps still bad? Yes, they are. Yeah, the torpedoes don't get fixed until like late 43, right? They start getting better in early 43. I think they fix, I want to say in early 43, do they fix the magnetic exploders, but they don't fix the depth issues until late 43? There's like 2 phases where they get better. So I think the torpedoes improve slightly. You get like a 20% improvement on the reliability in the early part of 43. And then they get basically fixed in late 43. I think that's my recollection. It was sort of, I believe it was sort of done in phases. But anywho, I'll have to finish this turn offline. But I think that's all I've got to show you. Sub-campaign not going well. I mean, I'm also not great at knowing how to use it. But the sub-campaign is going. I would say with the 2 notable accomplishments for our subs so far. So we put a torpedo into a heavy cruiser and badly damaged it and probably knocked it out for a little while. And we put 2 torpedoes into the Hiryu, I think it was. They were Dutch torpedoes, though. So one was a smaller torpedo, one was a larger torpedo. So we didn't, like, if they had been 2 large torpedoes, we might have sunk it. We didn't. But we did, I think, badly damage it. Probably knocked it out of the war for a couple months. She may be back already. She may not be. I'm not sure. The biggest success we've had so far in the war is we have sunk, and you have to, this list does include some fog of war, but we did sink the Haruna in that initial battle I was talking about near Mersing. With air-based torpedoes for the most part. They were, I believe, wildebeests, I think. Some biplanes came in and played a little Bismarck havoc, except actually like crippled the Haruna, and then our heavy cruisers kind of finished her off. Our largest ship lost, so that's their largest ship lost. You can see we've sunk a couple AMCs, one of them to a Mark 14. So we've sunk a few things with Mark 14s, a couple of AMCs with Mark 14s. And a few cargo ships, but nothing dramatic. Some Mark 10s from our S-boats, we had some success with those as well. But the biggest ship that we've lost, so they lost a battleship. We lost the heavy cruiser Houston and the troop transport President Coolidge and the sub-tender Otis, and then 5 big tankers and the light cruiser Raleigh. So we have lost some ships. The Java, you'd expect that to be lost, but kind of lost more tankers than I would like looking at it now. All right, so that's going to do it for this episode of War in the Pacific, Admirals Edition, and we're back. I'm sorry there were some technical issues at the start of the stream. The audio was way too loud on the gameplay. That's because somehow the local recording didn't occur, so I had to download this from the live stream that was on Twitch, so I didn't have multiple sound files to play with. So I do apologize for that, guys. Thanks again for tuning in. I've already sent the turn back, so hopefully we'll get another one back soon, and things may begin to pick up shortly. That being said, that's going to do it for today's episode of War in the Pacific Admirals Edition, my Let's Play series against Evoken. I hope you guys are enjoying it. Hope you guys are glad that it's back. And as always, until next time, This is the Historical Gamer saying thank you for watching, and I'm out. Bye-bye.